Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of Weighing In, the League of Legends talk show. And boy, oh boy, have we got an amazing show for you today. Play-ins has just wrapped up. We've got some surprises, we've got some upsets, we've got all of our opinions on the teams coming out, the teams going into groups, and we'll be giving our predictions for the League of Legends pick'ems for the group stage. And I'm your host, Josh, and I'm joined by my constant co-host, Ollie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very good, Josh. It is a lovely day here in England, a bit cold, but I'm ready to talk about
Cold,
these games.
bit rainy, to balance out the spice that was this
Exactly.
play-in stage. And before we talk about any of the games in specific, I just wanted to ask you your opinion on play-ins overall. What did you think of the format this year?
I actually really liked it. I liked the way that we had all these teams going head to head, and it wasn't really split up into Group A and Group B. We had these teams playing each other. I thought it was just super interesting to see all these international teams.
Mm.
Everyone having a chance at battling into getting to group stages, and like you said, there were some upsets. There were some uh, just really interesting games. I think it made for a really interesting planes in the beginning of Worlds.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think this is almost definitely the best play-ins we've had to date. All the teams seemed pretty competitive, and it was amazing to see lots of teams playing in best of fives.
Yeah,
Which is something we don't get to see of a lot of these minor regions.
yeah, I agree. I think seeing these kind of teams like Unicorns of Love, etc., playing these best of fives was really interesting to see how good they actually are. Because any team can really win a best of one. It's kind of like a coin flip, especially with these kind of games where you have two fairly even teams from international regions playing against each other. But the skill really shows in those best of fives.
Yeah, it definitely does, and it's brilliant to see. And there are a lot of strong minor regions. Actually, I think that's the theme for these play-ins is that lots of the minor regions who we didn't necessarily expect as much really performed very well. Actually,
Yeah, I agree. I think it was definitely surprising to see how teams like PSG Talon, who we spoke about, I mean, we had said, we were certain on these certain teams coming out, and though our predictions obviously weren't correct, we were certain Mad Lions were going to come out of play-ins. At least I was. And then you see
yeah,
these other teams rise like Unicorns of Love, PSG Talent, all performed really well. So it was just super exciting to see how these teams deal with these four big regions in the LPL, the LCK, the LEC, and the LCS.
it definitely will be, and it gives me a lot of hope for these teams compared to what we normally expect
Yeah,
from the wildcard regions going into the main tournament. But like you brought up, Mad Lions is one of the big stories. So let's kind of break down their role and how that kind of played out within Group A. And I think people still had a lot of hope for this team after day one, having a pretty convincing win in the opening game versus INTZ
yeah.
and a loss against TL, which lots of people expected. But it was all downhill from there.
Yeah, I agree. I think their win against INTZ was kind of expected because, I mean, after looking at the play-ins, at least INTZ were the team that probably performed the worst. Maybe just
Mm.
under Mad Lions because, I mean, Mad Lions did not perform very well either. But yeah, I mean, and again against TL, like you said, that was kind of expected. But after that, like you said, it just went downhill for them, and it was really disappointing to see because everyone, at least from EU, had loads of hope for them going into the play-ins. At least I definitely did. I think they could have done so much better, and I want to know what went wrong with this team. I can't really work it out.
So, so I think a lot of the blame um, is easy to point fingers. I think, and I've seen lots of the community get very upset, frustrated with the team and their coaching staff. And before I give any real genuine criticism towards this team, kind of the thing that I want to say is this is still an incredible year for Mad Lions as a rookie team. Their first year in the LEC,
Mm,
coming in, getting second in the regular season, winning best of fives, even against G2 in spring, and making it to Worlds is still a phenomenal achievement. So to lose out here, yes, maybe disappointing, but I don't think that should take away from what this team has achieved this year.
No, I agree. They've done super well, like you said. Team of rookies in the whole team, so you can't really expect them to perform amazingly on the world stage. Like they must have been super nervous, I can imagine. Especially
Yeah,
those players who are so. I mean, all of them had a lot of pressure on them being the EU team in play-ins. So if you compare it to Team Liquid, like all of them have worlds experience, so you can't have expected them to do greatly. But like you said, they had a great split, and you can't really take that away from them.
yeah, definitely. And now I've got that kind of disclaimer out of the way. For me, a lot of the not blame but the concern for this team does come from their kind of top mid duo. We saw Shadow be absolutely phenomenal for so much of this year. He really was absolutely incredible. And he just seemed to struggle again and again. And they put a lot of resources into this guy, and that was so disappointing to see him not converting on those resources when it really mattered.
Yeah, I agree. I think Shadow was definitely one of the weaker points for Mad Lions in the play-ins, which, like you said, super disappointing because he had a great split. We've seen him carry the team on multiple occasions. Him and Humanoid, like that synergy that we've seen throughout the whole of the split, just wasn't there with these play-ins, and super disappointing to see. I mean, Humanoid played well, played his best. Same with the bot lane, but like you said, the top and jungle just weren't really performing.
Yeah, and Humanoid was amazing. He really was. He was trying to get this team through at least to the best of fives as much as he could. But I just think that he was hampered a little bit by his team and also by the drafts. They just didn't feel like what was working in the group in the play-ins, and that might be because of a read or because the team just didn't have as much time to practice as being a less experienced team. Um, I don't know, but it does make me slightly concerned for some of the other EU teams if maybe the region's meta perception is slightly off.
Yeah, I agree, and like you said, that the meta perception I think is definitely a little bit off because we've seen Shadow picking some just odd picks like that he has not had success on in the past. Like we've seen him pick up Lilia in the play-ins and going like 0 and 3 in the first 15 minutes, something like that, and it just he wasn't working for him. I'd rather see Shadow on things like his Lee Sin that he's well known for and like his Evelyn, etc. These picks that he's used to playing. But I guess I mean, I've seen some things on Twitter saying that he was kind of told to pick these champs. I don't know how true that is, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
like it's
I think I guess with those kind of things you have to it's a joint decision, right? Regardless of how much the coach is telling you to pick one thing, you're the person with the mouse in your hand at the end of the day. So I think the blame comes down to both of them,
yeah,
regardless of who they think the blame is.
yeah. I mean,
Um, but even overall, we saw a lot of slower team comps and slower games in the play-ins, which was a little bit counter-intuitive as to what we expected. But Mad Lions definitely weren't playing that kind of slow, controlled style that seemed to work really well in the group stage.
yeah, I agree, and I think that's probably something that was a big issue for them because they just got beat out in the late game by these other teams who scaled better. They played the long game. They weren't taking these aggressive early fights that Mad Lions wanted to try and force. I mean, we literally saw them trying to just force fights at points, like literally just trying to get one kill, scrape one kill back, and just not really achieving anything from it. And again, even when they were managed to pick up those kills, not really converting them into objectives, etc. So, it looked like they were just kind of all over the place, really.
Yeah, and it's disappointing, but it'll be great to see how this team comes back and how they can adapt for the next season. And if they decide to make any changes, hopefully that'll be for the best.
Yeah,
One of the one of the teams that definitely did capitalize on their traditionally slow and controlled style was the winner of Group A when he went straight into the group stage of the main event. That was Team Liquid, who looked really impressive from where I was sitting.
yeah, I agree. I think they looked actually amazing, like so much better than I actually seen them in the LCS playoffs. Like they looked so much better. Literally everyone on the team has seemed to level up, and one key player for me was Broxer. I think Broxer. I mean, we've talked about him quite a lot before on the show.
Yeah,
Obviously,
with a fair amount of criticism.
exactly, and I have to say I have absolutely no criticism for Broxer in these play-ins. I think he played
Mm,
so well, especially on carry picks as well, which is traditionally not really his style. Like picking up the Graves and the
yeah,
Lilia, performing well on the Graves, going like 5-0 in 15 minutes, something in one of those games.
yeah. His Graves is almost must ban. I
Yeah,
think maybe in the second phase if he doesn't pick it in the first phase, just because teams really struggled to deal with that, and he played. I want to say 3 of their 5 games in group stage on it, and just looked great every time.
yeah, and I think this is something that I mean they probably noticed that if we put Box on a carry pick, he can carry. Like he's a very confident player,
Mm.
and coming into the play-ins, he looked way more confident than I think I've seen him throughout the whole of the split. Really, having the confidence to pick
Uh,
like those champs like is something we haven't really seen from
yeah,
him recently.
and I definitely think Team Liquid are benefiting from the world's play-ins meta at the very least because it definitely did look to slow down. And also, we see lots of these carry junglers coming in, things like the Lilia, things like the Graves, where they don't have to interact with their lanes as much during the laning phase, which was the thing that Brox has struggled with the most on Team Liquid.
Yeah,
So if you can give him a Graves and let him just hard farm, not have to worry about ganking all the time, that kind of negates some of the issues that we were so worried about coming in.
yeah, I agree, and Broxer just like I have no faults for him. Whenever they counter ganked, he read it. Whenever they were counter jungling, he read it. Even at level 1, he was invading, etc., not being seen on his graves. Like, I have no faults for Broxer in these play-ins. I think he was probably for me the
Yeah.
MVP on from Team Liquid.
Well, I think the only person that could challenge him for that most valuable player on Team Liquid was I think Tactical, the rookie of this team, coming into his first Worlds. I think this guy was a real standout.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Tactical for me has always been someone who's been one of the best ADCs in the LCS, paired up with Core JJ, of course. Um, and those two, again, obviously looked on form as they have been for such a long time now.
Yeah, and I thought just the pure aggression, the first game that they played on the first day, picking Twitch confidently for himself, flashing forward. I think it was like he was like just level 6, I think maybe level 7, and he stealths into mid lane from a base, flashes in, kills the enemy mid laner. And that really does speak as to how confident this rookie is on the main stage. It's super impressive, and he played 5 different champions in all 5 of their games.
Yeah, and like you said, having the confidence to pick something like Twitch, which people try to replicate later
Mm.
on in the play-ins, is something that I think is just super impressive. And on those picks, like you said, going for those aggressive plays, they're working out for him. Like you said, yeah, he's definitely looking confident on the main stage. Like even though he is the rookie, and that fills me with confidence for the Team Liquid team.
Yeah, 100%. And Team Liquid really did look like the only major region team playing against emerging regions. They look so much more controlled than any of the other teams.
Yeah, agreed. I think, especially compared to like we were talking about Mad Lions, they looked like Team Liquid had a clear game plan coming into these play-ins. They stuck to it and they were able to execute it really, really well, and that's why they had so much success.
Yeah, and that gives me a lot of hope for them growing into the main group stage. Was there any other teams you wanted to talk about um, from Group A, just in the group stage, or shall we just cover a couple of points from the Group B if we talk about the playoffs
I
part
mean,
of the
the only other team that really stood out for me from Group A was Supermassive, who they had a really good starting few games, and then they seem to kind of know what they're doing. This team but unfortunately they started to kind of fall off when teams started to figure them out, etc. Figured out their drafts, which is something I think
Yeah,
was definitely a highlight for Supermassive. Their drafts seem to be really, really good, but when it come down to the execution in game, you get they were beaten out against some of these teams later on in the play-ins. So that for me, it does fill me with confidence for next year for them to come back and do something even better. Like I have no real faults for this team. They played their best, and it's unfortunate that they lost against. I mean, we'll talk about it in a minute. They lost against UL in the playoffs, but
yeah. No, definitely both Supermassive and Legacy Esports were very impressive to be able to like knock out um, Mad Lions down into that fourth place and then out of the tournament by Supermassive.
yeah,
And it's really good to see these regions improving and developing more talent because that's going to set them up to kind of keep going in the years to come, which is excellent. So that's exactly what we want to see. Looking at Group B, I guess the real standout who we've already kind of touched on from the group stage was PSG Talon.
yeah, and I mean, I had never really seen much of this team. Obviously, I've heard them before, but they
Mm.
they played so well. They were super impressive coming into the planes. Yeah, I mean, they just really impressed me with how coordinated they looked and how clear of a game plan they had throughout the whole of the planes. You know, I'm super glad to see them going into the group stages, and I'm excited about what they're gonna do.
Yeah, definitely. This team looked amazing. The fact that they were playing the first two games with three substitute players was absolutely insane that they were able
Yeah,
to do so well. You know, their AD carry is not even a professional player. He used to be a professional player a few years ago, but he's currently a coach. And he stepped in to play AD carry for the first two matches. And then they were using a mid jungle duo from one of the other PCS teams. Admittedly, a very good mid jungle duo, and we saw them really, really excel. But the team overall was playing really well, and they, although it went to a tiebreaker, they were able to kind of clutch it out against UOL when it really mattered.
yeah, agreed. And I think, for example, like you said, that mid and jungle duo were substitutes. I think those two were probably the most best performing players on the team, to be honest, which is just super surprising. And I didn't have a lot of faith in them coming in because of that reason. But then those two performing super well, it kind of just you've got to just stand back and think, what they've really done well here. You can't fault them for it.
Yeah, no, no, definitely, and it'll be very interesting to see how this team fares when we get back River and Tank, their original mid jungle duo.
Yeah.
Um, but it was very good of them to go through with some very convincing wins first in that group. And on the flip side of this team that we didn't necessarily expect to do very well, improving massively, um, we had a team who we expected to do very well, really underperform at least in the group stage, and that was LGD. Talk to me about how the group stage went for LGD.
Yeah, I think they just seem to be. I don't really know what went wrong for them here. They just seem to be not playing well together. Like I've nothing else to say other than they seem to just not be playing well together. They seem to be almost too relaxed coming into the planes. Being this team from China, they probably expected to come into these planes and just dominate it. But they didn't have a lot of success with the best of ones, not playing so well, and almost going out even in last place. So it seemed to be the way that they played together, just something wasn't working.
Yeah, it was just the decision making didn't seem right. This team managed to int so many times. They are very much a win lane, win game team,
Yeah,
and they got the win lane part in most of their games. They just didn't quite understand how to then win the game from an advantageous position, and that's really disappointing, especially because this is against some of the emerging regions. You would expect just the experience against better teams with better macro to kind of allowed them to close out these games. But it just seemed peculiar in so many of these games.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, they're kind of probably more a best of five style team because we did see them play better in the playoffs with their best of
Yeah,
fives,
I
but
mean, it's so crazy because we talk about how this team underperformed, and then they go in 3-0 both of their best of fives against Rainbow Seven and Legacy,
yeah,
and make it out without dropping a single game in two best of fives. I just the only thing I can say is that maybe they were coming in too overconfident, um, and a little bit too relaxed. So it'd be very interesting to see how they fare in the best of ones in the real group stage. Because if they do that again, they are not going to make it out of their group.
yeah, I agree, and I think, there's definitely a switch that was flicked after the play-ins going into the playoffs. They definitely seemed to change something and play more coordinated. I don't know if that was a coaching style change, something like that. Maybe they just had more time to play together. Um, in China. But yeah, they looked so much better in the playoffs than they did in the play-ins. Like after the play-ins, I would have said no, they're probably going to lose to Legacy or one of other team in these best of fives. But no, they won, like you said, both of their best of fives in 3-0s. So
Yeah,
nothing
yeah,
really to fault
and I
them
think
there.
one person who really stepped up in those games was Peanut. He looked significantly better. He caught a lot of flack actually in the group stage for the way that he played, but he definitely started to bring out more of these carry picks, getting the Kindred. But all three games against Rainbow Seven just seemed super stable, something that he could always perform on. And then getting a couple of Graves games and a Nidalee game against Legacy. It just felt like they kind of changed slightly the way they played to be more peanut focused, which seemed to work much better.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, yeah, like you said, Peanut finally kind of playing better, playing with the team more, looking for those ganks, looking for those that aggressive style that we know he's more favoured towards throughout the LPL. Um, and yeah, like you said, the decision making was just more on point. Team fights, setting up those objectives, converting kills into objectives, etc., which is something they, like we said, struggled with in those best of ones. They just look to be like a more coordinated and playing better as a team. So props to them for winning their best of fives against Legacy. So yeah, like I have no real faults for them other than, like you said, if they come into the group stages feeling confident now, it could come back to bite them. To be honest, like we've seen in the play-ins.
Yeah, it will be very interesting to see how this team uh, performs going forward. The other line of playoff games was Supermassive versus Mad Lions to start with, which ended up as a 3-2, knocking Mad Lions out, um, and putting Supermassive to face Unicorns of Love. Now, that was a really heartbreaking series for a lot of EU fans. It did feel like the Mad Lions were trying to do everything they could to stop themselves losing, but it wasn't quite enough.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you said, it was a really, really rough, sad series for the Mad Lions, not being able to, come back into the fifth game. I mean, I think they played better in this series than we've seen them throughout those best of ones in the play-ins, but against, I mean, they were just simply, like for me, it looked like the top lane, Armu just absolutely outclassed Mad Lions. He's picking up things like the Wukong top, looking super strong. I think,
Yeah, Arome really struggled in that.
yeah, I agree. I think that it's super sad to see. I mean, like that top jungle duo is something that we touched upon earlier, not looking super strong for Mad Lions, and that was probably their downfall in this series again. I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then and so Supermassive go on to play UOL, and it was a pretty convincing 3-0 by
Yeah.
UOL. But God, this team, I cannot wait to see play
Oh
in the group
man.
stage. UOL, one of the most fun teams to
Yeah,
watch.
I agree. I think they just absolutely styled on Supermassive. I mean, especially No Man's, like for me, he was probably the MVP from this series, playing things like his Kassadin and then the Vayne in game three. which was just like a what the fuck moment because Vayne mid's not something we've seen since like 2017. Um, and playing well
Yeah,
on it, counter picking the set, playing Vayne mid, the confidence to pick something like that against a team who's just beat Mad Lions is really really impressive.
impressive. Yeah, and it was great to see Gadget
Oh yeah,
performing so well. I absolutely love these AP bottom lane picks, the Zigs
oh my
over
god,
and over again. Seems great, but he's still impressive on the more traditional AD
yeah,
carries. Um, you know, sometimes with these people who are really good at bot lane mages, they tend to struggle on the traditional carries, but not Gadget. He was super, super, super impressive, bringing out an amazing Twitch game to start off the series.
mm,
He's definitely him and No Man's are definitely my players to watch from this team.
yeah, I agree. For me too, and like you said, yeah, Gadget stepping up as well to I mean, I think all of Unicorns of Love, to be honest, just played so well. Like, Boss played really, really well. Like picking his Renekton.
Yeah,
I can't remember if he picked it once or twice, but his engages on the Renekton were just super impressive and able to just completely shut down Supermassive with big stuns, etc. And you
yeah,
know,
and he looked really, really good on the Wukong as well.
yeah,
The team seemed to be very they seem to all be on the same page, have great communication. As soon as Boss was going in on the Wukong, everyone followed up. There seemed to be a real good team fighting ethic within the team.
yeah, I agree. And it wasn't just these star players in No Man's and Gadget just carrying the game. It was the whole team, like we touched on. Everyone playing so well and setting up those kills and objectives, etc. So yeah, I mean, I'm really really excited to watch them in the group stages, and I actually have like quite a lot of confidence for them to come out of the group stages. I'm not sure if they will because they do have quite a tough group, but
Yeah,
um,
they do. I'm expecting to see them take some games, which I think will be brilliant.
yeah.
They've come so close to making it out of groups so many times. Even if they just make it out of groups and then leave, then I think it'll be an amazing success for this team.
Yeah, I agree. I think, it's really, really great for them to. I mean, it puts the team on the map really. I mean, everyone's kind of knows URL already, but it's putting those players like No Man's and Gadget on the map for them to be picked up by other regions potentially in the future. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's probably. I mean, I'm sure they're really, really happy just making it into the group stages.
Definitely. And now looking forward to the group stages, the way we're going to do this is we're going to give a brief rundown of the groups, highlight the roles or role that we think is most important, and then give our pick 'em predictions for the group stage, which starts tomorrow morning. So
Indeed.
it's almost no time at all now. So starting with Group A, we have G2, Suning, Team Liquid, and Matchy. Team Liquid slotting in after a very impressive performance.
Mm.
What's the most important role in this group to watch?
I think for me, probably the mid lane role, just because you have those, probably the second best mid laner from NA and the best mid laner from EU in Caps and Jensen, and then you have really strong mid lanes from Suning and Machi as well. Plus, the bot lane roles are going to be really important because Team Liquid arguably have the best bot lane in North America, and G2 also have a super strong bot lane in Perks. Um, Perks obviously being that mid laner, but performing really well in the bot lane for G2. So I think the mid and ADC roles for me are definitely going to be the two to watch out for in this group.
Yes, I have to agree, and I also think it will be interesting because we've got two really strong mid laners, which is not something we can say about Suning. We've seen Angel, the mid laner for Suning, struggle a lot domestically. Um, he's definitely not the focal point of their team. He's more of a supportive mid laner, where his jungler, SOFM, really is the heart of this team.
Yeah,
Um, compared, he's a very aggressive jungler, definitely someone who gets in your face a lot more, pushes his advantages a lot more aggressively. whereas the junglers from both Team Liquid and G2 in the forms of Broxah and Jankos are definitely more of the slightly slower style of a more controlled jungle. So it'd be really interesting to see how those two play.
Yeah, I mean, you say that Broxah is playing that slow style, but like we talked about, he's been playing those more carry picks recently in the planes, picking up things like Graves. So it will be really interesting to see how he fares up against SOFM. If they both go for the carry picks, who will come out on top? I'm not too sure really.
I think although both of these guys can carry, I think they do it in subtly different ways. What we've seen from Broxah work really well is when he's farming and his lanes kind of do their own thing, whereas SOFM carries by getting his lanes ahead. He doesn't. SFM is not someone who's going to be picking the Lilia, picking the Hecarim. We're expecting things like the Lee Sin to come out from this guy, where we really will be affecting the lanes earlier. And although we've seen Broxer do that in the past, I don't think that's necessarily something that he can do with this current Team Liquid lineup.
Yeah, no, I think it will be interesting to see how he deals with the early aggression of SOFM. I think that's definitely going to be something that Team Liquid are going to struggle with, and probably G2 as well. But I mean,
Mm.
the early aggression of a team like Suning, I mean, all of these LPL teams are kind of very, very aggressive. Aggressive early style plays. So it'll be interesting to see how either of these teams deals with it.
Yeah, no, it definitely will, and I think it could be a very close group. Would you like to give your pick and predictions from first to fourth?
Sure. So for Group A, I have gone with G2 Esports first because I feel like they have the best one-for-one matchup in the group, and I think they also have the best, just the individual play and the way they play together. And then in second, I've gone for Suning, third Liquid, and then fourth Matchy because I think that Team Liquid played really, really well. I think they're just a better team than Machi. And then the reason I've put Suning second is because I think, like we talked about, SOFM is just going to probably outclass Liquid. I think they'll probably take games off Liquid and maybe even a game off G2 and then definitely games off Machi. So that's why I've put it in that order. What about you?
Yeah. So I have to agree. I put G2 first, just because I think they are the strongest overall lineup and they have a lot of adaptability. We've seen them play around top, we've seen them play around mid, and we haven't seen necessarily bot lane be as important as in previous world metas. So my concerns for the G2 bot lane aren't uh, as big as they otherwise could be. But I've gone and put Team Liquid in second place just because I think having seen their kind of strength and consistency in the play-in stage, I think that they'll kind of come in and win a lot of these best of ones with just a very slow, secure style, which is something that can work really well in best of ones against some teams that aren't as consistent. Which means that I've got Suning in third and Machi in fourth, and Machi in fourth mainly because I don't know as much about them compared to any of the other teams in this league. They definitely could come third, but I just think that the other teams in this group are a step above Machi, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've been shafted with a fairly hard group, but I feel like all of the groups are pretty difficult here, so I can't really see them playing in any other group and really coming out either, to be honest, which is unfortunate. But like we said, it will be really interesting. Yeah, I'm still kind of undecided on that second and third spot. I think Suning and Liquid it will be very close for whoever comes second, but I think G2 will just definitely win this group overall.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you too, and I just think that looking to the regular season and to the playoffs of the LPL, we've seen um, we've seen Suning do some really dumb shit,
Yeah.
like some really dumb. We've seen them go 0-3 all lanes in the first 5 minutes and basically in the game. And if that happens in the group stage, that one bad game against one of the teams that you're fighting to get out of, so that happens against Team Liquid, that could be the difference between getting out of groups and not.
Yeah, that is true, and I think like those teams, like you said, G2 don't really kind of make those mistakes as often, at least. But I mean, Liquid have made some mistakes like that in the past where they've kind of just inted.
I don't think they don't make it as many though.
Yeah,
It's more
yeah, no.
a very stable early game into some good team fighting in the mid game with some decent decision making and so on. And I just think that that stability will lock them a greater percentage of the wins which they could get in this group.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think that the other two teams are, I mean, the other two teams other than Maggi are, yeah, way more consistent than the Suning team. But I feel like if Suning come in with a different game plan, a kind of a more coordinated style, I think they'll be able to take their games off Team Liquid. But it will be really interesting to watch regardless.
Yeah, definitely. And now, kind of onto the second group, Group B, we have Damwon, JD Gaming, Rogue, and PSG Talon coming in from the playing stage.
Mm.
And that's actually the order of my pick and predictions. I have Damwon in first, JD in second, Rogue in third, and Talon in fourth place. How does that compare to
Yeah,
yours?
it's actually exactly the same. I've got the exact same order. I think Damwon are looking like an extremely scary team. They looked so
They're,
scary in the playoffs for the
they're my
LCK.
favourites in the tournament in my for the whole thing, in my opinion. I think Damwon are exceptionally good.
They are they're playing so well at the moment, and I think they just simply are a league above the teams in this group. So yeah, that's why I've got them in first, and JD Gaming in second. I think they are a really strong team, almost winning the LPL split, but just losing out to top esports. I think they're still a very strong team and definitely stronger than Rogue and PSG Talon.
Yeah, and I think this there's so many phenomenally strong players to watch in Group B. If we look at Damwon, we really want to highlight their solo laners. It's Nuguri and Showmaker,
Yeah.
possibly the best mid jungle, mid top duo in the whole game, in the whole tournament. Sorry, and it'll be super interesting to see how those two can perform because they definitely underperformed slightly at last year's Worlds.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it will be interesting to see, like you said, you have is it Showmaker and Nuguri for Damwon.
Yeah,
Those two are obviously the stars of that team, but they also, have a extremely strong way that they play all together in those five-man team fights. They always look so coordinated. We've seen it in the finals against DRX where they simply look to just be a completely different team, like on a whole another level to any other Korean team.
yeah, definitely. They are so much better than any other Korean team, which kind of makes them a little bit difficult to to give a true power level to. Because we can say that top esports and JDG, although are much better than the rest of the LPL, in my opinion, they're quite similar to each other. Whereas Damwon is so by themselves and they haven't played a lot of um, close competition. And so I could definitely see them coming out second with JDG in first, but I just think the consistency that Damwon have shown will put them in first in this group.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think the games between Damwon and JD Gaming are going to be very, very close at least, and they'll be super interesting to watch because we'll see how Showmaker can perform against these Chinese teams, sorry, and it will probably give Damwon, if they do beat JD Gaming, more confidence to face off against teams like Top Esports, etc.
Yeah, I think 100%. If we see convincing wins from Damwon against JD in the group stage, I think the people's perception will definitely shift, putting Damwon as a heavy favourite in the tournament because JD and Top Esports in the LPL were so close. They really were.
Yeah, and I mean, even we seen in the LPL finals coming down to a 3-2, and at that, the last game was very, very close. Either team could have
Yeah,
taken it, and Top Esports coming out on top, they deserved the win, but still a very, very close series. So they seem to
yeah,
be on similar levels, so it will probably give Damwon a good kind of benchmark for what they're going to be coming up against TES.
Yeah, and it definitely feels bad for Rogue and PSG in this group
Yeah.
because the other two teams in the group are two of the three favourites, arguably, for the tournament. Is there any hope? Can we expect Rogue or PSG to take any games off of the top two
I
teams?
mean, I would love for Rogue personally. I mean, we've seen Rogue perform super well in best of ones throughout the whole of the split, ending up in the first place in EU. So, well, first place after the regular split in EU. So, I have hope that they might be able to take a game off JD Gaming. Maybe they'll probably beat PSG Talon as well, but I don't see them really winning too many games, especially not against Damwon. I don't think they'll probably take a best of one off Damwon because they are just a league above any other team which we've talked about before. So, I think I don't have a lot of hope for them to win games or especially not come out of this group personally.
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult situation, and the players that we look to um, definitely are going to be the mid laners. I think for these two teams, we've seen how incredible Larson was throughout the summer split, and with Tank coming back in for Talon, I think a lot of the pressure will be on these two players to play against some of the best mid laners from the other team's respective regions. If they can match up there might be some opportunities. But I think if Rogue and PSG can't at least match and hold their own ground in the mid lane, I don't think they stand a chance going into the middle lane game.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think, like you touched upon, Larson having a really good split. Also, Hansama and the bot lane for Rogue having a really good split. So that could be a focal point for Rogue to try and pick up some games. But it will be super interesting to see how Larson does against people like Showmaker. I'm not sure I have a lot of faith in him to at least win his lane against Showmaker, but we'll see. We'll see. Whatever happens, he could surprise us. You never know.
Yeah, it would be brilliant to see these teams perform, but it's not necessarily something that we
Yeah,
expect.
exactly.
And then on to the penultimate group, Group C, arguably the most wide open group. It wouldn't surprise me if any two teams from this group advance. What do your pickums look
So for me, I have Genji at the top,
like?
Fnatic in second, TSM in third, and then LGD Gaming in fourth place. What about you?
So I also have Genji in first place. I think they are arguably the second best team from the LPL. I think they've looked, sorry, from the LCK.
Hmm.
They've looked really strong, really consistent. They've got some great players all round. Um, excuse me. Um, and it'll be brilliant to see them. And I think they'll be super consistent in this best of one double round robin format, especially against these other teams where I think they'll have the best bot lane duo by far. I then have TSM in second place over LGD in third and Fnatic in fourth.
Yeah, I mean, I think like we touched upon, it could be anyone's game really. The reason I've put Gen G first is similar reasons to you. Like you said, you have the two, I mean, they're arguably the best bot lane duo in the world on the team, the best support in the world, in my opinion, in life. And then the reason I've gone for Fnatic second is because I think, you know, Reckless and Hillisang are a very strong bot lane duo. I think they have better bot lane duos than LGD and TSM. Not Genji because obviously they are just a league above, but I feel like they would definitely be able to hold their own against those TSM and LGD. And I think the only kind of weak point for Fnatic is in the mid lane with Nemesis going up against Bjergsen is probably not favoured towards that EU side, but it depends really where Fnatic, I mean, where any of these teams really kind of focus on, which lanes they focus on. I mean, it's kind of predictable towards which lanes they will focus on. Fnatic probably going to be looking towards that bot lane as they always do with Selfmade in the jungle, and TSM probably going to be looking towards getting Bjergsen fed. That when Bjergsen and Speaker play together so well, and
I, I definitely think it'll be a race to see who can get their snowball rolling first in this TSM Fnatic matchup. I think TSM will arguably stick to what has worked for them really well in playoffs
yeah,
and work through Broken Blade to kind of exploit some of the overextension that we've seen from Whippo throughout the regular season. Yeah, whereas Fnatic definitely will aim to kind of exploit the bot lane who have had their troubles for TSM. But I think that the way that this TSM bot lane has been going, they've been moving to more of a supportive role anyway, and that's something that seems to be working in the meta as well. So I think they'll be harder to abuse than Dwipo will be to abuse in the top lane. So I kind of see that giving a slight edge towards TSM in their matchups against Fnatic.
yeah, no, that is true. That like you said, the TSM bot lane seem to be playing a more supportive style recently, but it just depends really who can get the ball rolling. Like you said, who kind of finds those early picks. Selfmade obviously loves to go for those early ganks towards bot lane, and if he can, I mean, we could even see either of these teams completely switch up their styles. We could see Selfmade, focusing more on the mid lane, trying to not let Nemesis fall behind against Bjergsen.
Yeah.
It just depends really on how either team responds to the junglers. I think it all really lies on the junglers here, so that's what's going to make these games super exciting to watch, I think.
Yeah, and it'll be super interesting to see how Speaker performs at his first World Championships. I think he was a real shining light from TSM in the playoffs, and it'll be interesting to see if he can keep that performance going. And I believe he will, but it would also not necessarily surprise me if he was to really struggle at an international level.
Yeah, no, I think especially against teams like Genji, Speaker might struggle a bit more, and against that more. I mean, I think Speaker's style kind of matches how these Asian teams like to play in LGD and Genji, but it all depends really. I mean, I think this group especially all have quite similar aggressive play styles,
Yeah.
makes for like a super super coin flippy and exciting group. So
Yeah, no, these teams are definitely some of the ones that build the biggest snowballs from their respective regions,
yeah.
and so lots of the games I think are going to be very explosive, which will lead to a lot of volatility, which is another reason why any of these teams could make it out. This is definitely, at least in my opinion, going to be the closest and probably the group to watch.
Yeah, without a doubt. For me as well, I'm definitely going to be keeping a close eye on all of these teams and how they perform.
And neither of us necessarily predict LGD, the LPL fourth seed, to make it out of this group. Just share a little bit of your reasoning behind that.
Yeah, no, I think it's just because of how kind of, to be frank, poorly they performed in those best of ones for the play-ins, and coming into these best of ones, you have some of the best teams from across the world. The first seed for NA, second seed for EU, third seed for the LPL. So it will be super interesting to see how they can perform. But like I said, I don't have a lot of faith for them in these best of ones, and that's why I've got them in fourth place for my
Mm.
pick'ems.
And so from fourth place in Group C to the fourth group,
Mm.
um, more heavy hitters here. We have Top Esports, DRX, FlyQuest, and the Unicorns of Love slotting in from the um, play-ins stage. How have you put these down in your pick'ems?
So I have put Top Esports as my number one, just because I think they are probably my favourites to actually win the tournament. If not, at
You
least
have to
do
be
really well.
crazy not to put them first, yeah.
Say again.
You'd have to be crazy not to put them first in
Yeah,
this group.
exactly. And then for my second, I've got Dragon X, who, obviously that second seed from the LCK. I think they had a really good split. And then for third place, I've put FlyQuest because again, I think they had a really, really good split, played really well in the playoffs. And then in fourth place, I've put the Unicorns of Love, who coming in from the play-ins, played really well in the play-ins. But I feel like with this group, they're gonna definitely struggle, especially in best of ones against these teams who have, I mean, to be frank, amazing best of one records throughout the whole of the split.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely think top are the easy first place pick. Um, this is a team of absolute superstars. It really is. When you think about this lineup, and you go player by player, there are arguments to be made for each one of these players being the best in their respective role, at least in their region, if not in the world. Knight from the mid lane is definitely my pick to watch, and there's no way you can argue there's someone else that you want to watch on this team. Knight is phenomenal. The way he thinks about the game and the way he uses the champions that he plays is like no one else currently playing professional League of Legends.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think for me, he's probably the best mid laner coming into this tournament. And I honestly just can't wait for top to get out of the groups and then see that Knight versus Showmaker matchup. Is going to be so exciting to watch that.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really would because that's my other pick for the best mid laner in the tournament would be Showmaker.
Mm.
Um, and so hopefully we'll get to see those two players match up because that would be a phenomenal best of five mid lane matchup to watch. Um, for Group D, I also have Unicorns of Love in fourth place, and I think although they had an amazing performance in the play-ins, I just think coming up against a slightly different caliber of team, they might be able to get some wins, but I don't think that they'll have enough tricks up their sleeves to take maybe a second place in this group. So that leaves FlyQuest and DRX as second, third, and you had DRX second
Yes.
and FlyQuest.
Yeah.
So I've got those flipped. So explain to me why you have DRX above FlyQuest, and then I'll give you the counter argument.
Um, Really just because I think DRX. I mean, I know you say that Dam One are leagues above DRX and LCK, but I think Dragon X. You can't really take away from how good of a split that they had coming into those playoffs. I mean, nearly losing to Genji, but Genji, like I would say they're a better team than DRX still, but I just feel that DRX, they have that one up on FlyQuest in pretty much every role, in my opinion. Those one for one matchups, I think DRX wins pretty much every time, and the way that they play together, converting kills into objectives, I think Dragon X, they just have the edge overall against the North American side of the FlyQuest.
So I think that yeah, DRX definitely have some stronger players, but outside of their mid lane matchup, where Chovy is easily better than Power of Evil, not Power of Evil is bad,
No,
don't get me wrong, but Chovy is such an exceptional talent. Um, I don't necessarily give DRX massive individual skill um, like advantages over the team of FlyQuest. We've seen Solo be pretty consistent in the top lane. We've seen Santorin be an excellent jungler in North America. And we've seen the bot lane be consistent with a lot of carry performances coming out of Wild Turtle. And we know that their support player can play a lot of these Rakans, these get more engaged, aggressive support picks, which is definitely looking like it will be favoured in the meta. And I just feel like Flycast will be consistent enough to, as when we've seen what DRX do over and over again, when DRX drop the ball and they in a little bit, I think FlyQuest will be there to catch and to run and to finish out the game. Whereas DRX are just so much more likely to drop games they shouldn't be.
yeah, no, and like you touched upon, Ignar playing the things like the Rakan, he's super strong on those kind of champs. I think yeah, they may find success in this. like you said, Santorin, super strong jungler, played really well throughout the whole of the playoffs and throughout the whole of the split. So it will be interesting to see what they can do. I mean, yeah, like you said, obviously Power of Evil kind of gets outclassed in the mid lane, but I have faith in either of these teams, and that kind of second, third place for me is still a bit undecided. It's not 100% one of these teams is gonna come out. So yeah, either of these teams I think could make it out of group stages.
Yeah, definitely. I think it could be very close. I guess the overall um, thing that I'm weighing when we come to all of these groups is consistency. I talk about teams like Team Liquid, teams like Damwon, teams like Genji, teams like FlyQuest, who are really consistent in their regular season, whether it was best of ones or best of
Yeah,
threes. I think consistency is going to be the biggest factor for teams that are trying to make it out of groups, because it doesn't matter how good you are in a best of five. If you can't be consistent in these best of ones where upsets can take place, you will never make it out of groups.
yeah, no, and I think traditionally we've seen these kind of teams not really make it out of the groups, but it's really just like a coin flip, best of ones, like we said, and I think all of these games are going to be super exciting to watch, and I really just can't wait for them to start tomorrow.
Tomorrow, I literally cannot wait. And on that, unless you've got anything else to add, I think that covers it for the play-ins roundup and group stage preview.
Yeah, I don't think I've got anything else to say other than, make sure you catch all the games because this is probably going to be, in my opinion, the best worlds we've had in a long time.
Yeah, I think this will be phenomenally good. Really, really close. I absolutely cannot wait to watch all of these games starting tomorrow morning for us in the
Yeah,
UK. God knows how North American people are going to watch these. Have fun whatever time it starts, midnight or 2 a.m. or something for the first game. Um, and then we have one, two, three, 4 days where all the groups will be playing every day. And then we're going to have a podcast next week, a midweek edition after week one of the group stage, before we enter into week two and we see each of the groups being decided in their respective order, with all of those games being played on a single day. It will be absolutely excellent. So we'll see you mid next week for a week one wrap up and a week two preview of the World Championship group stage.
indeed.
Thank you, everyone, for listening.